Kalen. Kalen. Kalen was here first, Kalen Schumacher Walker, but she says, I can't stay, I'm just here for some quick pine points. You know how dirty that makes me feel? I'm going to award 1,000 pine points to Kalen, but not until the end of the stream. So you don't have them yet. Oh, that's so cruel. Okay, I want to welcome all the apologists that have arrived to class today. You learn more in 1 hour on the PineCreek channel than you do at 1 month at Biola. And it's tuition free. You don't have to pay at all. And, well, in fact, I'll give a guarantee that you're going to learn more here in 1 hour than you will at Biola University for a full month. And if you don't, I'll give you your money back. Hey, glad you could make it, Evan Edge. This is a very interesting debate. It was between Tom Jump and Stephen Worthy. I think Tom Jump did very well. I think Stephen Worthy did well as well, except, well, you're going to see a few points here that I'm going to bring up that I think are important. And the first one was, I think the real issue for many apologists, many Christians, is that the reasons they give why they believe is not the real reasons they really believe. It's the reasons I think they feel that they can defend the easiest or the best. But Stephen Worthy, in his closing statements, actually divulged the real reason he believes.
For me, these arguments are supportive of something that I know emphatically, something that I know as much as I know I think, therefore I am. My own existence is so obvious to me, and in the same way, Jesus Christ is so obvious to me.
Jesus Christ is so obvious to him. I want to bring up a picture here. You know who this is? Oh, well, I forget her name. This is Phelps. I forget her first name. Is it Mary? Mary Phelps? Westboro Baptist Church. God hates... if I say that word, I'm going to be demonetized. F-A-G-S. Do you think that this, I think her name's Mary, this Mrs. Phelps, I think Jesus is obvious to her as well. Stephen Worthy, do you disagree with me that Jesus is very obvious, who Jesus is very obvious to this Phelps lady? Can someone say that Jesus is obvious to them and their concept of Jesus be mistaken? If so, how do you know you're not that person?
Out of all the arguments for whether or not you could know God exists, I think the most powerful is that you can experience God for yourself.
You can experience God for yourself. Let me bring up another picture. This is a testimony from a Muslim gentleman who was involved in drugs and crime, and his life was radically changed by the experience of Allah in his life. It's on my YouTube channel.
That if you're searching for God, that tonight is not an accident. You're not here randomly. I sincerely believe that God is reaching out to you, that God cares about you, that God loves you.
Here's one of the reasons, the specific reasons of experience of why Stephen Worthy believes. It's because the belief in Jesus, the belief in God, makes him feel special, that he's not just a random accident.
God has radically transformed my absolutely destitute life into what it is now, but that's not why I worship him.
God has radically changed his life. So even though Tom Jump did a wonderful job of talking about all the different arguments and evidence for God or not, this is what impacts people. This is why especially people who are not born and raised in a Christian family, why they become Christians later in life, it's usually because of desperation. I say indoctrination is the first reason, desperation is the second, and usually desperation happens later on in life, especially in your 20s. But this gets back to what I was saying earlier. This person's life was radically changed from his belief in Islam. I think also, is it Malcolm X? And intelligent apologists realize this, and so they don't like talking about experience because every person in the world has experiences. The question is it matched with something real outside your own brain?
I don't worship God because he's changed my life or that he's helped me through certain addictive things or strongholds or prisons. I worship God because I've witnessed what he's like and who he really is.
You've witnessed what he's like and who he really is. And so has this lady. This lady has witnessed who Jesus Christ is, what he is like. And Jesus hates certain people. Did you know that, Stephen Worthy? You know what? And there's Christians who are not as radical as her who would agree with the statement I just made, that Jesus does hate certain people. He hates who they are, not just what they do, because of their sinful nature. And it's only through the transformative regeneration through the Holy Spirit that Jesus can now love someone, because Jesus just hates sin so much. And people are sinful, full of sin.
And that's why I'm here. That's why I'm doing this. God is the reason for living. He's the reason for everything.
Hope, meaning, and purpose. This is where it's at. It's like so many times you hear apologists talk about the ontological argument, the cosmological argument, the theological argument, the moral argument. This is not why they believe. I shouldn't be so dogmatic. This is mostly why they don't believe. They believe because of the reasons that this gentleman, Stephen Worthy, is giving right now. It gives them meaning, hope, purpose, changed life, a sense of significance, specialness. In fact, the question to ask a person like Stephen Worthy is, if you left Christianity, would you fear that you would go back to your addictions? Do you fear that you would lose meaning, hope, and purpose if you left Christianity?
I love God. And if you don't know him, I want you to know that you can. And for me, that's the last argument that I offer. Not the first, but it's the last one.
It's the last one.
Thank you.
I love asking the thought experiment question of you have 30 seconds with a loved one, a doubting loved one, and you're trying to convince them to either stay with Christianity or go with Christianity. What do you say? I think Stephen Worthy, his first answer, not his last one, his first answer is going to be what he just said. You can know Jesus. You can experience him in your life, just like this Phelps woman. Maybe I'm being too harsh bringing up pictures like this to make my point. But I think if you're intellectually honest with yourself, Stephen Worthy, you'll see that what I'm saying is should rightfully cast doubt in everything you believe, if this is the reason you do believe based on these experiences. Okay. Boy, I feel like I took a knife and just went too deep there, too fast. But I want to get to another point. This is I've watched this once before, and apparently Tom Jump he mentioned my name, so I'll play that part. But this is the part where it's a mic drop. It's so awkward, so uncomfortable at this point that I just have to play it. I like awkwardness. Here we go.
Yes, if let's say tomorrow you had some reason to absolutely believe there was a God, and there's these different religions on the table that say, well, we've got a God. You've got the monotheistic, and for some reason you've got a reason for monotheism. Is Christianity on the table for you, or is it just never going to be on the table?
Well, the idea of Jesus, I'm not opposed to Jesus, but the Old Testament God, I'm vehemently opposed to. All of the suffering, like one of my friends on YouTube, Doug PineCreek, he has this analogy that God drowned babies during the flood, world flood. That kind of, like, nope, can't worship that God anymore. That God cannot be all good. That pretty much ends it with that God as being a potential candidate.
Sure. Wow.
Okay, now listen to the response by Stephen Worthy that Jesus drowned babies. Tom said God, but he should have said Jesus, because for Trinitarians, that makes more of an impact. Listen to the response.
That brings us back into the problem of evil and suffering. That's fair. It's very tempting. Every time it comes up, I'm like, let's jump in and do it. No, but it's like when you're hanging out with your Christian friends and they want to get into the debate about predestination versus free will, and then it's 3 a.m., and you work the next day, and you're like, why did I do this again? When will I learn? So, how much time do we have on our open dialogue?
How much time do we have left? His response was basically, how much time do we have left? I know Christians are probably sick and tired of this moral argument pushed back on their face when it comes to Old Testament atrocities, but I think it's valid because one can do an internal critique of their definition of morality, and using their definition of morality of God being all loving, all good, all this great stuff, where you have a picture of Jesus as saying, children, come sit on my lap, and let me bounce you on my lap, and you have to be such like these to enter the kingdom of heaven. And yet, this is the same Jesus, let me be very clear, it's the same Jesus that drowned babies in the Old Testament, if you believe that. Now, a lot of Christians have, that idea is so bad to them, they have forced themselves not to believe certain things in the Bible because the cognitive dissonance is too high. I actually think, maybe I'm being sexist here, but I think this argument even works better with women because of the whole birthing thing, and just imagine your own son or daughter being drowned. And I actually have a list of 7 apologists, female apologists, who I would love to have them answer this on camera. Answer the question of, do you believe Jesus drowned babies? You know what? I bet you all of them would say yes, on the list I have. People like Mary Jo Sharp, Beth Moore, Mama Bear Apologetics, which is, actually there's 2 different Mama Bear Apologetics? No, there's only one. Oh, I forget her first name. Alyssa Childers is another. Salt and Grace, Amy Kay, Lori Stewart, Lydia McGrew. Oh, I know definitely she believes Jesus drowned babies. Diane Newman, Nell Brace. Some of you might be watching this later, and I'm calling you out here, and I'm saying, look, if you're a Trinitarian and you believe Jesus is God, God is Jesus, different personalities, of course, different persons of the Trinity, but still, same one God. Does it hurt your worship? This is the way I think you should phrase it. Does it hurt your worship that Jesus, that you love and that you yourself worship, that he drowned babies, that he basically took the heads of toddlers and babies and pushed them underwater until they were squirming, until their lungs filled with water, and died. Toddlers, babies. Does it affect your worship on a Sunday morning with that thought in your head? And if that thought is not in your head, if you have just heard me ask this question, it's going to be in your head next Sunday, this coming Sunday when you worship. You're going to remember what I just said, and it's going to bother you. And you know what? It's good that it bothers you. It should bother you. I asked this question to my wife once. Didn't go over too well. I regret asking my wife. I don't regret asking these other women because I don't have to live with them. Actually, my wife and I very rarely talk about these sort of things, but I think it was a few years ago I did bring this up, and it was very uncomfortable because I think it does affect people's worship. Okay, I'm just going to skip to closing statements. Not the closing statements, to the Q&A section, because there were some interesting questions. And one thing that's interesting to note is that almost all the questions were directed at the atheist, Tom Jump, not the Christian.
For me, these arguments are supportive of something that I know emphatically, something that I know as much as I know I think, therefore I am. My own
Okay, that's not it. It's right here.
That's totally up to you. Speakers as well.
Okay. Well, first I just want to say you guys are, it's pretty awesome just seeing the dedication, just how much of your time that you guys both spend to study, and it's definitely not my conviction to, you know, be as deep into a lot of these issues as you guys are, but it's super cool just to see, you know, what you guys both do, and so I'm much more simple-minded as far as a lot of things go. But
He's pulling a technique from PineCreek. I'm just a simple-minded guy.
So this question is for Tom. So I heard you use a lot of the terms if and could and possibly and unknown natural when addressing, you know, just different topics, you know, scientific or otherwise. But science does name concepts by name, not unknown. And you say that science stops at what can't be tested. You also say that science goes...
By the way, this is a great question coming up, so listen, in my opinion.
Gives us a way to differentiate between the imaginary and not imaginary. So most in the scientific community, and this may not be you, but most in the scientific community that I'm aware of anyway, they name spontaneous generation, for instance, as the origin of the first life form, which is the foundation, really, of, you know, from the first life form till we got here. It's a concept that's deduced to make a bridge between no life and life, because we can all agree that we're alive in here. Well, most people would probably agree with that.
Most of us.
Yeah, right, most of
I
us.
object.
So
Sorry.
spontaneous generation kind of being the bridge between no life and life. It has not been tested or duplicated even once in a lab, making it not scientific. It is just a theory. So would that widely accepted theory be equal or have more merit than deistic creation?
Well, we're taking the position.
Okay, so we have abiogenesis and we have creation, deistic creation, I think he said. The problem with this question is, besides it being too long, he could have just asked that. Do you place more value on one versus the other? The problem with the question, though, is God could have used abiogenesis to fulfill his goals, right? So it's not like that's two separate boxes. God could have used the natural processes, and a lot of Christians believe this actually, to cause life to be created. But anyhow, let's listen to Tom's answer.
We don't know would have more merit. So we could come up with an explanation. In fact, there are lots and lots of different hypothetical explanations of the origin of life, abiogenesis. And
Yeah, a great answer by Tom. Basically, the answer you should give is the answer that has the most merit on things we don't know is to say, I don't know.
And recently, we actually have seen a lot of progress in this. So we've seen RNA, which is the foundation of DNA, being made by itself on clay. So we've seen the basis of DNA forming from lifeless inorganic material on its own, on clay. And then
That's someone
RNA
all placed there.
What?
That's someone all put together in one place.
No, this is on its own. They just
On
put
its
it,
own, okay.
just put it together. It forms on its own in clay, and we can know DNA can form from RNA. I actually had a debate on this with Dr. Fuzz Rana from Reasons to Believe. So we've actually been making lots and lots of progress on this, and it seems like this is just one of those unknown things, like lightning. 2,000 years ago, we couldn't explain lightning.
Correct.
So is Zeus a better explanation than we don't know we're going to withhold judgment until we have evidence? Well, I'd say no. I'd say the best explanation is we're going to withhold judgment until we have better evidence. For example, it's like induction. If we see white goose, white goose, white goose, white goose, white goose, and then we see a blank, the next best explanation is either we don't know or white goose. It's not black goose. And as far as we can tell, throughout all of history, all the discoveries that have ever been made have always been natural. So we have natural explanation, natural explanation, natural explanation. So the next most reasonable conclusion is that the next unknown is probably going to be a natural explanation, not a supernatural one.
Okay.
Yeah, why posit a new category of things called supernatural explanations when maybe a natural explanation can do? It's like, Christians, do you really accept every miracle claim you hear? Jesus, he helped me get a mortgage. Is that a miracle? Or is there a natural explanation for that? Or even someone had cancer and now they don't. It just went away. Is Jesus the answer to that, or explanation, or some just natural cause? How often do you say miracle? How often do you say natural? And I think I think it's more reasonable and, dare I say, more rational to say, well, why don't we go with the natural explanation first until we have reason to think otherwise? And this is basically what Tom Jump is saying. I was going to say something about, like, you can tell a Christian about the Miller-Urey experiments and so forth, but I don't really think it's going to resonate with them. I really don't. But I think a question to ask some Christians, at least, would be, if it were found out tomorrow how exactly to get life from non-life, would you stop being a Christian? Would you stop believing in God? If we knew exactly how to do it and we could repeat it in the lab. Or would you come up with some other excuse like, well, we can't create a human, we can get to 10 cells, but we can't really get to a human. It's like, at what point, what would you need to see in order for you to say, oh yeah, this is completely a natural process, life from non-life? And would that change your mind about God and deities and so forth?
I would say the same thing about life.
Okay, thank you.
Would I be able to have a 30-second, I guess, quick on that? So when it comes to arguments for God based off of microbiology, I personally don't really utilize that. If that's something that you're passionate about and can utilize that well, that's cool. I think it's easier and more potent to go with like the fine-tuning argument, because it's more or less the same argument, but with fine-tuning, it's on a grander and even more difficult scale. Like the cosmological constant is tuned to 10 to 120th power. That's insane. That's an inconceivable number. So I think that cosmology is easy enough that you wouldn't have to appeal to biology for the fine-tuning of life. But.
So Stephen Worthy is mentioning, the cosmological argument and this question about abiogenesis. But again, what I played just earlier, this is not why he believes. He believes in Jesus because he feels he had an experience of Jesus and it changed his life. And I think he had addictions in the past and he no longer does.
Yeah, that's all I had on that.
Testing?
Quicker question?
Quicker, yeah.
Is this working? All right. Hello. So the fun one, I have a couple-part question because, well, I had some questions, but then I had to rewrite my questions because Stephen literally covered what my questions were. Good job, by the way. I'll show you later. It's like word for word. But this first one is a fun theoretical question for anyone that we're probably not going to answer. If science can really answer anything that theology can answer, how many universes has the letter X created? And if the letter X created universe, does creating said universes give the letter X personhood and consciousness?
That's a stupid question.
I think.
Who are you asking?
It's a joke. It's kind of a covering of the whole.
All right.
It's,
The answer is the square root of a pork chop.
Yes.
Great recovery by Tom there, because the joke question just fell flat. Tom actually made it funny.
That's how I feel about abstract concepts creating things out of nothing for no reason. That was the point of the joke. Now for Tom.
You want a second question?
Yeah, and so you can tell that this guy believes, basically for arguments from ignorance, it's like, I can't imagine, I can't think of any other explanation why we have consciousness other than God, so therefore I'm a Christian. Therefore Jesus rose from the dead. Nah, it's not quite that bad. But.
Now for Tom. You think like I do. I see a lot of myself in you as a younger individual who was atheist at one point. You're probably.
Oh, no. You were never an atheist. A true atheist never becomes a Christian. I love saying that to people like this because you hear it so often from especially Calvinists.
Probably very high in openness in terms of like the big traits, that kind of idea. You seem to be open to any and every idea that isn't God existing, as you covered kind of in your description. So to me,
you seem to be open to every idea of God not existing. I am quite sure Tom Jump is just as open as I am, which is open to the idea of a deity existing and revealing him or her or itself to us in a reliable method, a repeatable method that we can say with confidence that yes, this God's real. Like.
Individual who was atheist at one point. You're probably very high in openness in terms of like big traits, that kind of idea. You seem to be open to any and every idea that isn't God existing, as you covered kind of in your description.
You're so close,
to me, suggesting possibilities is not providing proof. It's interesting, it's fun to listen to, it's not convincing though. The proof of Christianity is the thousands and millions of transformed lives with personal experience and sometimes direct interaction with God.
Okay. This is what I was saying earlier about helping apologists become better apologists. If you say anything close to what this guy is saying, you're going to be viewed as a laughing stock. You're basically saying, we got the numbers, honey. We got the numbers. We got thousands of people who've experienced Jesus. There's the proof. There's the pudding. We got thousands of changed lives. Okay, let's just look at all the numbers. We have 2.2 billion confessing Christians on this planet, according to polls. Christians out there, how many of them do you think are true Christians? Out of the 2.2 billion, how many are true Christians? I bet you some Christians would say it's maybe 10% of that. It's maybe 220 million. Well, how many billions of Muslims do we have who believe sincerely that their lives have been transformed because of Islam and so forth? We got, 1.5? Was it 1.8 billion Muslims? And they're catching up. Question for this guy, if you ever watch this. When, not if, when Islam takes over Christianity as the biggest religion in the world, does that make Islam more true? Of course not. What you're saying right now, gentlemen, is what not to ask, what not to say if you're going to call yourself a defender of Christianity.
Which you dismiss as illusionary. So why is it that if we were to say, take a judgment of beauty, which is something that, as Stephen talked about, can't be determined by science, we would say this is the most attractive person in America.
Wrong. Beauty can be determined by science. They've done studies on this, objective beauty. It's like symmetry. Like you can, it spans across all cultures, all religions, all geographies that I think because of evolution, we can objectively say what is more beautiful than other thing. And it has to do with symmetry of the face and not having spots that make people look sickly and weak and so forth.
Today, we would not use a scientific method to do that. And what I believe is God, in terms of experiencing him, has decided to not use science as a method to determine who he is. It's almost
Okay, here's another example of what not to do. This guy is just bloviating now. If you're a Christian watching this and you go to something like this, and actually this advice is for atheists as well, non-Christians as well. It's nobody cares about what you have to say. In fact, a lot of people don't care what I have to say. Then they're not watching me, right? They just click off. They go somewhere else. But here we have a situation where they're in a auditorium and it's like difficult just to up and leave, especially if you want to listen to other things coming about. We don't care what you have to say, gentlemen or ladies. Just ask your question and move on.
almost like he's hiding from science. Why are you determined to prove him through something that's obvious he doesn't want to be proved through, if that makes sense?
A couple things there. So science explains beauty through evopsychology. It's just a product of our brains due to evolution and social constructs.
Oh, yeah, I forgot Tom
I would say it's essentially the same as what is the tastiest meal. I do not believe that God, or I believe that you probably wouldn't say that God grounds the judgment of tastiest. It doesn't have a property of the tastiest food. It's just kind of subjective product of evolution. Well, beauty is the same thing. Science does explain beauty perfectly well. So I don't really see a problem there. But I wouldn't say the universe was created by abstract things. I've never said the universe was created by an abstract object. In fact, I think essentially no atheists believe that. They all believe that some natural thing has just always existed. There's always...
Tom, I would be very careful to say no atheist believes that, because you're bound to find an atheist who believes crazy things, right?
been a natural thing or something natural that exists outside of space-time, like you believe God to be.
But
I think we should probably keep our questions a little shorter, without any setup. If it's possible to do it without a setup, to just get right to your...
Yes, and especially Christians, if you're bringing up verses or quoting scripture or preaching, basically, nobody cares what you have to say. You need to... I tell myself that all the time, but I have the solace of the fact that people can just click off my channel, so...
we've got a little longer lines. People are lining up, so is that a good enough?
You can go to the back, and if we have time, you can ask her more.
Well,
yeah.
The reason that I asked it was because you were suggesting in laws that could create the same way God could create with no planner behind it. And I was just really wondering how exactly you could justify that belief. It's basically on faith.
Yes, exactly. It's just we're asserting here's a possible explanation that we've essentially made up, which is from the atheist perspective, the same thing the theist is doing. Here's a possible explanation we've made up, which is a God, and he does it because it's his nature. We can just say the same thing. Well, here's a possible explanation.
Except for they have the individuals who have had the experience with God, which you dismiss as not.
Right.
Except we have proof, we have evidence, we have all these individuals who have experienced God, like Megan Phelps' mother. I forget her first name. Anybody know her first name? Is it Mary? Yeah, she's experienced God. It's obvious to her who Jesus is, and Jesus hates certain people.
We're going to let Tom have the last word on this, and then we got to go to try to get as many questions as possible.
Experience doesn't give us a way to differentiate between what's imaginary and real. And so the fact that someone has an experience of something, just like the fact that people have experience of UFOs, isn't evidence that UFOs exist. We don't believe people because they had an experience of UFOs, or that there's lots
Great
of experiences
example,
of UFOs.
Tom.
Because we have thousands of eyewitness testimonies.
Although a lot of Christians believe in UFOs, but they call them demons. Remember, like Q. Ross would just say UFOs are sometimes demons who come and take physical form.
Testimonies of Bigfoot and tens of thousands of the Loch Ness Monster and hundreds of thousands of homeopathy and magic and millions of ghosts and hundreds of millions of Hindu miracles. The fact that lots of people have personal experiences isn't something we go off of to judge whether or not something is true or whether it exists.
Yeah, great answer, Tom. I don't know how, if I'm a bad person for doing this, but I feel like I, as strongly as I can, say to humans out there, your experiences of deities is not possibly wrong or mistaken. It's probably wrong or mistaken. Every Christian listening right now, every experience you've ever had about Jesus is probably, not possibly, probably wrong. Why do I say that? Because we have examples of billions and billions of experiences of deities in the past within Christianity, within Islam, within all the different religions. They can't all be true. So if we're just looking at using experiences as evidence and just, we're being neutral and looking at all even playing field, it's not possible. Your one individual experience is not possibly wrong. It's probably wrong. Your experience, Stephen Worthy, of Jesus Christ in your life is probably mistaken. In fact, it's probably 99.9% mistaken. Everything you think you know about Jesus is probably mistaken based on that experience. Is that strong enough? Is this getting the point through?
I just want to thank both of you guys for coming out today, and especially for Tom being able to come out and into a church, probably something that is a little...
Oh, her name is Shirley? This is Shirley Phelps? Like, Shirley Phelps is not... She is so confident, this woman, of what she believes about Jesus. She is just as confident as... In fact, let me put it this way. I think Stephen Worthy is just as confident as this woman, Shirley Phelps. Two confident people, and you know what? They're probably both wrong.
A little discomforting in certain ways, so I really appreciate that. And at the very end of your talk, you had stated that you wanted evidence. So this question is actually for both of you. What is evidence? And on top
Great
of that,
question.
What kind of evidence would it take to be able to change your mind completely about what you believe? So for instance, for you to become an atheist, and then also for you to be able to possibly become a Christian. So.
Yeah, I'll start with that. So evidence for me is future testable predictions. Like, there are infinitely many ways to explain anything. Like, if a cup falls over, maybe it was the wind, maybe someone bumped the table, maybe it was a mouse or a squirrel or a bird. But the good explanation, the best explanation, is one that can predict what we're going to see that we haven't seen yet. So we can say, well, if I think it was a mouse, and if it was a mouse, we're going to find mouse droppings around the cup. And then if we look and we find them, that's a good reason to believe that that explanation is better than the other explanations that couldn't predict it. So in the case of a God, if you can say, if there is a God and I do a prayer or something and this prayer will result in a gold brick in front of me, that's evidence. Now, of course, it's not conclusive, but it is evidence. And what would convince me completely? Well, as far as I know, like all powerful, you can't really justify that. Because even if I saw God and saw him create a million universes, that million is still 0% of infinity. So if I was going to be convinced that he's infinitely powerful, I have no idea what evidence that would create. But I could believe there is a God. I could believe it's Yahweh. If we could give it a time travel and see Jesus rise from the dead, that's good evidence of Jesus. There's lots of things you can show, but the omnis, I'm not sure anything could convince me he's all powerful.
Sure. So for me, evidence...
That's a great answer, by the way. Evidence is something that supports an idea, supports a claim, that gives rise to something in your brain that says, yes, I think this is true.
Quite simply, without getting too technical about it, is just good reason to believe something. So I think that there's different categories of that. There's different ways of thinking about that. There's even different kinds of reasoning and logic, like abductive reasoning or different arguments.
Yeah, it's not a bad definition. A good reason to believe something. That's what evidence is. So is it evidence? Is it a good reason to believe that Vishnu is real based on experience of a Hindu? Is that a good reason for that Hindu? Now, Stephen Worthy would have to say no, because he probably doesn't believe Vishnu is real. So there's a problem now. He has to say that certain types of evidence is good and accurate and trustworthy and reliable for him, but that type of evidence for someone else is not. That they've been misled, deceived maybe from evil Satan or something.
I'm really into formal arguments, whether there's something physical or something more abstract. For me, It's
I'll take questions at the end of this. So I noticed there's some questions in the chat. I'll take questions at the end.
an interesting question. What would change my mind? Because I have a properly basic belief in God. So it's something that's grounded in my experience in a deeper way than my
Alvin
senses.
Plantinga.
So it's not something that like I saw God or I felt the presence of God. It's something that I believe as much as I believe that I exist, that I can think. So with that properly basic belief being grounded in something that I feel connected to God in a way that supersedes all things.
I feel connected to God that supersedes all things.
I'm not saying it's exempt from a defeater. If a defeater were presented to me that showed me,
Yeah, he's using Alvin Plantinga language all throughout this. People who have found it difficult to defend Christianity through evidence, they talk like this.
clearly polytheism is true.
If we found
Or-
Jesus' body.
Yeah, like if we found Jesus' body and we knew that it was Jesus' body and there was no, I don't have any idea how we could create that scenario.
Yeah, and kudos to you, Stephen Worthy, for admitting that it would be really hard to even demonstrate that you found the bones of Jesus.
But really, I will say that you could present a defeater to my properly basic belief, and then I would have to forego it. And actually, that's what I wanted when I.
Yeah, and I just presented a defeater to your main reason why you believe, your experiences of Jesus through so many different experiences, similar experiences. There's a Stephen Worthy in every religion. You can find a Stephen Worthy type person in every religion who's had experiences, who believe what they believe because of those experiences. And yet, Stephen Worthy, you would say they're wrong. But I'm guessing, this is probably a good guess. What Stephen Worthy would say to that is, well, that's because there's sin. And God allowed free will and that there's sin. And so people have these experiences, but really it's because of sin they're experiencing, they're misinterpreting their experiences, or that an evil demon's causing these experiences and making them think it's of the true God or whatever.
I was a young Christian. I came from a background, I wasn't raised Christian. Around age 18 to 20, I got into a lot of drug problems. I was a tattoo artist, and when I became a Christian, there was this big pressure to well, you can't do this, and you can't do that, and you got to give up this, and I was really ornery about it, and I was the biggest problem at Bible studies with my questions. And there was a short period in my life where I wanted to dismantle my own faith, so I searched for the defeaters. In my own experience, all I received was more.
Yeah, but if Stephen Worthy, here's the problem: if you believe that Jesus Christ saved your life, literally, not just your eternal life, but your life here on earth because of what you were messed up with drugs and maybe crime or whatever, it is next to impossible for you to see the defeaters objectively. It's like a mother who loves her son, and his son has been convicted or arrested for murder. That mother who loves her son is going to say, my Billy would never do that. No, officer, my Billy, he's not capable of killing another human being. That mother cannot objectively see the evidence for what it is because she loves her son. And because you love Jesus, Stephen, and think that he has saved your life, pulled you out of the abyss, it is almost impossible, for you to see the defeaters objectively.
Reinforcement of that belief, which really annoyed me at the time. So yeah, great question.
Thank you, guys.
Don't know what it'd be.
I truly think, but here's a question. I don't even have to, I can ask Stephen Worthy myself if he ever watches this. Are you scared that if you left Christianity, you would go back to that old life? Are you or not?
So my question is for Tom. Assuming that you're concerned with being consistent in your worldview, that is, everything logically fits together and makes sense. I'm assuming you affirm determinism, since I would assume you are a naturalist. Do you believe that there's objective meaning to your life?
Yes, I am a determinist, and I do believe in objective meaning, and you don't need to have free will to have that. From the atheist standpoint, meaning doesn't need to be given from some kind of magical source outside. Like, we believe in objective morality.
Tom, you should not have said the word magical. You turn off people right away, Christians.
Just like we believe in meaning and all those other things, even without a God. So yes, I am a determinist, because I don't know what it would mean As far as I know, every action you do is either done for reasons, in which case it's determined by those reasons, or it's done for no reason, in which case it's random, and those are the only two possibilities. There's no way to escape that dichotomy. So either you got determinism or randomness, and it's one of those two, and there's no way to get free will.
Yeah, for some reason, it's just not Christians. A lot of people get confused about this. If you believe in Christianity and believe you chose Jesus out of your own free will, did you have reasons? Did you have reasons to choose Jesus Christ as your personal savior from your own free will? If your answer is yes, that you feel you have reasons that you did that there was causes in your life that caused you to say, now I accept Jesus Christ as my Lord and personal savior. This is sort of what Tom is saying here. There was a cause that preceded, there was an antecedent cause that led to you becoming a Christian. It just didn't go poof and you're now a Christian. Actually, some Christians do believe that, though. But that poof is... No, that poof is still a cause. It's called the Holy Spirit.
Question for Tom. I was wondering how your epistemology accords with historiography, or where they intersect. Because, as you already well know, logical positivists had a devil of a time with future testable predictions happening in history. You just simply can't do them. So... like, for example, I can think of a dozen or so possible conspiracy theories for how Abraham Lincoln was assassinated or how he died. And I can even think of very simple ones, such as he slipped on a banana peel in Peoria, Illinois. How does your epistemology accord for very simple conspiracy theories as opposed to very complex ones that, like... Yeah, I'll leave it at that.
I have no... This is my second time watching this. I still don't know what this guy's asking, but we'll see how Tom answers it.
At that.
Right, so simplicity is usually a big one. Occam's razor, go with that one. But I'm not a logical positivist, so that was pretty well defeated a long time ago. But my position on historical evidence is the consensus in philosophy or in history is that most biblical scholars and historians hold to it that the study of miracle claims lies outside of the bounds of a historian acting with a professional capacity, which is a quote from Michael Licona in one of his papers.
Great use of quotes from a fellow Christian. My advice to non-Christians, not just atheists, but non-Christians, whenever you're talking about these sort of things, quote Christians as much as possible, and hopefully they're Christians that the person you're talking to respects. I don't have any idea if this person respects Michael Licona, but if he does, he's going to rethink things and say, oh, here we have a professional historian saying, you know what, we can't really use history to be confident about things like miracles.
Historians and miracle claims. Essentially, history can't adjudicate new things that we haven't discovered yet. So if I told you I saw a dog, that would be reasonable to believe. If I told you I saw a unicorn, that would not be reasonable to believe. The difference between these two claims is that dogs have an implicit empirical basis. There's lots of things about dogs that we can demonstrate today, like their fur, chemical composition, makeup, how to train them, what they're allergic to. None of that exists for unicorns. And just like it would be reasonable for you to believe my testimony I saw a dog, and not my testimony of a unicorn, the same thing applies to historical testimony. So it's reasonable to believe historical testimony that there was a guy named Abraham Lincoln who was shot in a theater. It's not reasonable to believe historical testimony of miracles, magic, mythical creatures, the paranormal, supernatural, UFOs. So most historiographers grant things that we can demonstrate or have some basis in empirical reality, but they don't grant things which do not, which is essentially miracles, magic, mythical creatures, the paranormal, the supernatural, and UFOs.
Yeah, this is great answer. It's basically, I think many Christians agree with what Tom just said, but they just, when it's applied to the Bible, it's really hard for them. It's like, you guys, Christians, you don't believe that I have a nuclear missile in my garage right now. I can tell you, I can look you straight in the eyes and I can say, I have a nuclear missile in my garage. And now I need to welcome the members of the FBI to the live stream because it's been tagged. You don't believe me when I say that. But if I told you that I have a bicycle in my garage, you believe it. And this is the whole idea of matching evidence, matching claims with evidence, matching evidence with claims. Well, a great thought experiment that I think should be asked more often of Christians or theists in general is, hey, my great-great-great-grandfather went to the Grand Canyon. He ran off the edge just with his clothes on and flew. Okay? I'm not joking. He did this. He flew. Unaided. Take a pen, take a piece of paper, and write down what exactly you would need, evidence-wise, to believe that claim. Write it down. And now compare it to the evidence for the resurrection and the fact that you believe the evidence, you believe that the resurrection happened. and compare your two lists. Why you believe in the resurrection and what would it take for you to believe the flying man? And I think right away you'll see an inconsistency. I've actually done this experiment, and the smart Christians, they see where this is going, and they'll actually say, well, was there any criterion for embarrassment with the flying man? It's like, it's ridiculous. They'll think about the criteria of embarrassment before they would think of 5 independent news agencies from all around the world videotaping it. It's like, really? Really?
Hey, Jeremy, how's it going?
Good, how about you?
Pretty good.
Wow.
They're both from the same state.
Yeah, Jeremy Lynch, I'm friends with both of these guys. I'm Minnesota repping with Tom, but go Packers.
Boo!
All right, anyway, question, quick. So for the cosmological argument, that's a big argument we talked about. Are there any potential significant differences for how that argument could explain, say, a theistic conclusion versus a non-theistic conclusion, let's say naturalistic pantheism? In other words, is there something that would make us lean a little bit towards one way versus the other in regards to that argument?
Okay, I forget Tom's answer here, but for me personally, what would lean one way versus another is the fact that all the examples we have in history of things coming into being created, is from past stuff that's material. So white duck, white duck, white duck, white duck. Okay, what's color's the next duck going to be? Well, we can use induction. You know, we could be wrong, but we can use induction to say, well, it's probably going to be a white duck. And we can use induction in the same way to say, well, our universe was probably created by something material, some stuff. It is outside our time. It is outside our space. It is outside of our type of matter. It could be maybe even different subatomic particles that preceded, if that even makes sense, our universe. But still, it's material.
For both people.
No, strictly the 3 premises that are presented in the original Kalam do not. They don't say anything about a God. They just say anything that begins to exist has a cause. The universe began to exist. The universe has a cause. Now, there's 3 more premises which are added by more modern philosophers like William Lane Craig, where he says the premises presented by Stephen about only minds and abstract objects can be non-material or exist outside of space and time. Now, of course, those are essentially just rejected wholesale by most philosophers because we have no evidence of minds existing outside of space and time. There's just nothing of that for the most part. So if those were valid and sound, then yes, but they're not. So no.
Rejected wholesale by philosophers is a pretty strong statement. I'm going to give just a solid disagree on that. I think, again, saying X amount of philosophers think this about something is not addressing the argument itself. I think that causality and agency are necessary. That's why a mind is a better candidate than an abstract object. So yeah, just easy answer.
Thank you.
I realize this is a big one for a lot of Christians, this whole idea of mind just makes more sense of being the first cause of our universe rather than just material always existing. But if you really think about it, why is that? Like, how exactly does a mind create a universe? If you really think about it, really, I think the only answer a Christian can say is, well, it just does. God is all powerful, so he just thinks it, he just says it, and it happens. Really? Is that what you believe? Isn't that almost, if you really think about it, almost as crazy as matter just always existing in the eternal past?
Hi, guys. And this one's for Tom too, Stephen. I'm sorry.
I'm really lonely up here, guys.
So, Tom, Stephen gave you a pass on it earlier, but the thing that kept hitting me that you were saying this evening was comparing my ability to do whatever I want to do with slavery. Now, I have children. I've raised children, and for a large portion of their life, they were not allowed to do whatever they want to do, and that would not be considered slavery. I was making decisions for the best interest of my children at the time. When they reached an age where they could make their own decisions, I allowed them to move forward with that, and no one would consider me a slave owner at that time, except my children, of course, when they were mowing the lawn, doing the laundry. So that it isn't really a refutation of what you're saying. My thought really was to let you know that when you're using that argument, that's what came to my mind was, yes, I could consider it slavery in some cases, but parenting in others.
Right. So in my case, it would be as long as you don't drown your children. There's justifications for why you give children those limitations, which is because you're teaching them something, because if they don't learn it, they're going to have greater consequences later. So like if they put their hand in the fire, you're like, no, don't do that, because the slap is better than the burn.
Right.
But if they could just be optional and turn off the burn, well, then there's no reason to slap them. So if you can make it optional, both the punishment and the consequence that you're trying to avoid, then there's no reason for the punishment.
But also if I'm making s'mores with my children, it's a lot more fun to make it over the fire and tell them not to stick their hand in the fire than to make them in the microwave. So that's the, that's the argument that I'm making. So thank you, Tom.
Hi guys, how you doing? I just want to thank you again for coming out. This has been really great. Really appreciate this. Tom, I'm just going to go out on a limb and I'm just going to tell you right away that I'm going to set you up. Okay, so this is much more of a statement than it is a question. So if I need to be cut off, just cut me off. Okay.
Don't
quickly. Okay, so I'm going to try and make a really quick case, and I'm just going to ask you a very pointed question. So my case is that you say you're knowledgeable about quantum physics.
Relatively?
Okay.
Yeah, and now, again, I have watched this once before, but I forget exactly what the question is and what the answer is. But I can tell already this is just going to be a stupid question. It's like using quantum physics to demonstrate God. It's like, ugh.
That's good. Okay, so the dualistic nature of reality is that things are open until they're closed, right? And so
Particle wave duality.
I'm sorry?
Particle wave duality.
Correct, right. So my claim is that Psalm 19 says that the firmament declares the works of God, that the glory of God is seen in the creation. And if we can look at quantum physics and say that something is open until it's closed, and what makes the difference is that we observe it, kind of gives credence to the object of faith as a tangible thing. And so I bring this up to kind of point a question at you and say...
It kind of gives credence to the idea that faith is a tangible thing? Is that what he said?
Isn't it possible that the Bible in its entirety...
As soon as you hear the word, isn't it possible, 9 times out of 10, 99 times out of 100, you could, before he even finishes, you can just say yes. In fact, Tom, my advice is if a Christian ever asks you, is it possible, before they even finish their sentence, just say yes.
Entirety and every claim that it makes could possibly close the system for you, and just say that if I would put my trust completely and wholeheartedly in the name, again, something tangible, the name of Jesus Christ and what he did. And Paul also makes that claim in the New Testament where he says, if Christ was raised from the dead, then everything has credence. If he was not raised from the dead, then nothing. All of our faith is worthless.
I got so many thoughts racing through my mind right now. First of all, this gentleman has no clue of how others outside of Christianity is perceiving him right now. Otherwise, I don't think he would talk like this. Second point. Christians love to talk about the resurrection. However, and to say that if Jesus rose from the dead, then everything he believed or commanded or preached or whatever is true. Lazarus rose from the dead according to the Gospel of John. Is everything that Lazarus said, did, from that point forward is true? Well, he didn't predict his death, Doug. Oh, okay. How do you know Jesus did? Because it says so in the Gospels. Oh, I see.
And so there's a lot of really simple arguments in the Bible where it just makes the statement that says, if, Occam's razor. It's very simple, the simple gospel. And
the simple gospel, not so simple when you talk to Calvinists versus non-Calvinists, who's saved, who isn't, what heaven's going to be like, what hell is going to be like. It's not simple when you got people who believe in annihilationism and conditionalism and eternal conscious torment. The simple message of the gospel. What are we exactly being saved from?
Taking the Bible in its entirety can, I believe, for an individual, close that system. And there are perfectly good explanations for the problem of evil if it's taken in the entirety of Scripture. And so my only question, again, I told you I would set you up. My only question is that if you could put your faith in the name of Jesus Christ, could that close the circuit for you to say,
what an
yes, it's
absolutely stupidest question.
Put your faith in the name of Jesus Christ. Could that close the circuit for you?
Close what circuit?
To say, yes, it's true. Because there is a definite and an indefinite.
if you could put your trust and faith in Jesus, could that help you say it's true? What is this person
The question
saying?
is that if you could put your faith in the name of Jesus Christ, could that close the circuit for you to say, yes, it's true?
If you could put your faith in the person of Vishnu or Ganesh, would that close the circuit for you, Tom Jump, to believe that Hinduism is true? All you have to do, my dear Christian friend who's asking this question, is just change a few words and see if your question is reasonable, sensible. It's like, if only you could become desperate, Tom, desperate enough like Stephen Worthy was, who needs his life radically changed, then you would see the truth of Christianity.
Because there is a definite and an indefinite, and what it takes is the object of faith.
Well, I've tried it. I mean, I was a devout Christian for 18 years of my life, so most of my life, or almost 18 years.
No, you weren't, Tom. You were a pretender. You might have thought you were a Christian, but no true Christian leaves Christianity. That's how probably half of the Christians watching this right now is saying.
And most atheists were the same way. I mean, atheists are usually people who have really sought and strived extremely difficultly, read the Bible many times, prayed over and over and over again, and completely devoted their lives to Jesus, and to find out it wasn't working, there wasn't anything there. So it's possible, anything's possible. But the majority of atheists would say, no, I've already done that, it didn't work.
Okay, thank you.
Would you agree that we got to have faster questions?
Yes.
James, how long
I
does it
was
say?
about to cut that one off. So it is true. We want to keep it as fast as possible. I keep cutting in.
So if you're a Christian watching this, this is a good lesson of how not to ask questions in a debate like this.
Set up just pure question, 10 seconds or less if you can. Really try to, because there's more people that want to ask questions, and then of course we have to wrap up the debate as well. So.
Hi guys, thank you very much. I just want to make an argument, and my question for you is if you agree or you do not agree. The argument is based on, I see like science versus theology, like the clash of the titans. So let's see if we can find a common ground in between theology and science. Let's say this book is the absolute truth. Nothing else apart of this book is the truth. So science is like a witness who start opening page by page, unfolding all the
question already is nonsensical, because if everything outside that book is not true, does he mean like ontologically? If that's the case, then how can you even observe that that book is true?
Absolute truth, but little by little. We don't know anything yet, but science is pretty much unfolding this book till they finish and all the truth is known. So my question is, do you agree with my argument?
I would say no. I mean, science says there is essentially no such thing as absolute truth. Everything is tentative, everything is provisional.
Tom, you did a great job here, because if it were me and it's this question, and there was another question earlier where I would just say, well, actually, probably half the questions, I would just say, what are you talking about?
Everything we could know could change in the future. We could be in.
And you're giving more of a political answer that's, I think, related to the question, but not exactly, and answering it well.
The matrix, we have no idea. Everything science does is just, this is the best we can do by making combinations of the things we can verify, and that's it, and we stop. It's very, very small. The things we can know with science are infinitesimal percentage of what's out there. So science doesn't make any claims about absolute truth, and that's why science and religion are incompatible.
And this is why a lot of people don't like science or are uncomfortable with science, is because it doesn't give that type of certainty that they desire, because it gives them comfort.
Compatible in many ways. It's because science says we need to get rid of this idea that we're going to get to the absolute truth, because nothing we know even qualifies or comes close. And religion says, we can know the absolute truth, it's this God. And that's why religion and science are in conflict, because science doesn't want to go beyond what we can demonstrate, and religion does.
See, a lot of Christians, they'll say, well, science keeps on changing. 10 years ago they said this, and now they're saying that. You can't trust science. Now, for Christians who say that, I want you to know, at least try to understand or empathize with the idea that there are many people who think that's a good thing. It's a good thing to say, oh, we were wrong 10 years ago. Now, based on the new evidence that we have come across, we changed our minds, or now here's the new theory. For people like myself, we get comfort from that we're willing to change our minds when presented with new evidence. Now, I do understand for a lot of Christians, that doesn't give them comfort. If God changes, if science changes, uncertainty, right? It's like, how do I know who I am? What's my foundation? My only advice is to take uncertainty, take this thing we call doubt, this questioning, and just have it wrap around you, and just take a deep breath and enjoy it. I like the word ensconce. Become ensconced with uncertainty.
Thank you. That's it. Emily has a hyper quick question she would like to ask.
I really hope it's hyper quick. I really hope this is hyper quick, so I'm going to get us back onto your problem with consent. That you said that, I want to create my own world, and he should give us the option to have consent. Okay, consent does not exactly imply ability, so you don't have the ability to create your own world, I'm guessing. So let's start with that premise. With that premise, with all that you have experienced up until now, with all the things in your future, for your life, do you consent to your life?
I do not consent to being forced to live here against my will. I do not consent to suffering. I do not consent to hunger. I do not consent to strife.
I'm not asking that. I'm asking if he gave you the option and you couldn't create your own world, I'm asking, with everything that you have experienced in this life, good and bad, and everything in the future, and only your life, because that's really all you have control of, would you consent to it?
I'm not sure. I'd have to think about it.
Okay. And then on the other side...
What did she ask? Consent to what?
Your own world. I'm asking, with everything that you have experienced in this life, good and bad, and everything in the future, and only your life, because that's really all you have control of, would you consent to it?
I'm not sure.
Would you consent to live? I missed it. Someone in the chat, tell me what she's asking.
I'd have to think about it.
Okay. And then on the other side, if you did have, it's just the opposite. The opposite question is, if you could create your own world, because you can't create humans, because that would make a slave owner yourself, would you choose your world or his world?
I would choose my world for a second, for every second of every day. For example, you don't need to be able to create humans to be able to share a world with humans. Like, for example, if everyone has the right to create their own world, you can still go to someone else's world. You don't have to stay in your own. You can still voluntarily move there, even if you can't create humans. So there's not really a problem there. You can still spend time with other people. You can all collaborate and join a collective universe and make one together.
Thank you.
For those of you who have never seen Tom jump before, what this is all about, I don't want to go into detail, but basically it's how Tom views, and how I also view, that the God of the Bible is an evil God because of the whole idea of we didn't choose to be created, and we were created in a world that's full of pain and suffering and what Christians would call sin as well. The question I love to ask Christians is, would there be sin? Would there be evil? Would there be pain? Would there be suffering if your God did not create anything? They have to answer, no, there would be none of this. So what we're left with is a world, a universe with sin, evil, pain, suffering, solely because this God chose to create in the first place. This is the problem of evil and problem of suffering.
Okay. So this is for Tom. You took the stance that by definition, our existence...
Tom Jump is just saying what that lady was asking. She's asking if you would relive your life as it is or choose to not live at all. She's basically, yeah. I think for most people who live in the West, they, not all, but a lot, would say, yeah, I just live the life I have because we have it so good here in the West. But for most people who might have a meal every other day or have some type of terminal illness, I think I've met a couple people in my life who would say without hesitation, no joke, without hesitation, I wish I was never born.
Given the existence of the Christian God as slavery, but the definition of slavery refers to humans owning humans. Humans owning lesser beings like animals generally isn't considered slavery. And the Christian God would be a greater being, so we would be lesser beings than him. How would you respond to that?
I would call that speciesism. I think that it's immoral to kill animals just like it's immoral to kill people. I think they're living beings and they should be respected. And I think that animal cruelty is terrible and wrong. And I think it is slavery to own animals and not without their consent. So I would call that speciesism.
Okay.
I watched him eat a burger today.
Maybe it was a veggie burger. Was it a veggie burger, Tom? I was asked a similar question a while back with Randall Rouser about speciesism. I don't know where I would draw the line, but I do think For the most part, if we have the choice not to eat animals, we shouldn't. You can easily imagine situations where you either eat an animal or you yourself will die. Of course, those are extreme exceptions. But is it wrong to step on an ant? Well, unless you are, what's the name of that religion? Jainism? Not Jainism. Is it Jainism? They believe that even stepping on an ant is wrong. Is stepping on a leaf immoral? Most people would say no. Is stepping on an ant immoral? Is stepping on a butterfly immoral? Is stepping on is crushing a hamster immoral? Is crushing a dolphin immoral? I think for every human being, it's slightly different, but I think the vast majority of human beings, there's nothing wrong with stepping on a leaf or an ant, and but there is something wrong with crushing a dolphin or a chimpanzee. Why is that? I think it's because we tend to value, and I think it's because of evolution, we tend to value species closest to our own.
Next question.
Breaks this thing. You know how much I hate talking in front of people, Stephen.
Thank you.
You know that.
This is a big moment.
Oh yeah, I'm petrified right now. So Tom, I had a question for you. Sorry, Stephen, you get to be ignored again. For the whole evil and suffering thing.
I think this is the last question.
For you. Have you ever gone through anything difficult in your life?
No.
Sarcasm. Yeah. Sarcasm.
Did you become a better person because of it?
Sometimes yes, sometimes no.
Fair enough. And then my other thing for the slave.
She's asking that question because she's showing that there's utility in pain and suffering. But the problem of evil and suffering is not so much that it exists and it can't be beneficial, but it's the gratuitous evil and suffering. Like hundreds of thousands of people killed due to a tsunami. Like, really? Is that character building?
Slavery, and I'm going to be the weirdo in the group. I'm agnostic, so I'm not even anything close to either or whatever you guys are. I just kind of decide not to be ignorant.
Yes, you are close to me and Tom because you probably don't believe in any deities just like we don't.
Enough to not believe there's something, because I definitely know I'm definitely not at the top of that food chain. But if you choose God, as Stephen has, is that then considered slavery still if you choose to follow him?
No, not if you choose to.
All right, that's all I had.
Good questions.
Oh, I guess there's another.
Super excited about being here tonight. I was looking forward to it all week. Tom, this is for you. So my father taught me right from wrong.
Okay, I remember this one. This is another example. So if you're a Christian listening, this is an example of what not to do.
Yet I still made my own decisions, good or bad. It's my biological father I'm talking about. My father allowed me to have free will. My father made me mow the lawn, shovel the snow, chop wood, because I obeyed my father. Yet I never felt like a slave. My father knows me better than anyone could ever know me. My biological father I'm talking about again. Yet he can see the best and worst in me. My father can predict with perfect accuracy poor decisions I make, and he's not supernatural.
My father can predict with perfect. Let me rewind that.
Perfect accuracy. Can see the best and worst in me. My father can predict with perfect accuracy poor decisions I make, and he's not supernatural.
Perfect accuracy, and he's not supernatural. You don't believe that, do you, sir? You're saying that in some aspects of your father's life that he's perfect, without blemish, without error? Is your father Jesus, whoever's asking this question? This is what not to do if you're a Christian.
Yet, my father's not surprised when I do wrong, but yet he's angry at the poor decision I made that he knew I would make. He's still angry. My father did punish me for wrongdoings, and once he took it way too far. And he promised never to do it again. And he kept his promise. My father loves me unconditionally, and I love my father the same. Tom, if my Christian God does not exist, and I was simply created by my biological father, is my biological father evil?
If he created the world in such a way that you have to go through all that suffering, and he could have created a better world and didn't give you the option to go to that better world, then yeah, he's immoral, because he forced you into this world where he had to teach you all of these things, whether you wanted to or not, and go through all of this suffering, when he could have just created a different kind of a world and given you the option to be like, nah, I don't want to experience all that.
But
Okay, so this guy, I don't know why they didn't zoom the camera in on him. But this guy's asking a question. You can tell he's a little bit shaky in his voice. And he's saying, hey, if my earthly dad isn't evil, then why do you dare call my heavenly Father evil? But here's the difference. Actually, this is the problem. I would have asked the question, Tom, if I was you, I would have asked the question back at him. And I would have said, what if your dad perfectly predicted, as you said, your dad perfectly can predict, that you would grow up to kill 1,000 children at some type of big school, public school, 1,000 kids. Your dad perfectly predicted that that would happen. Is your dad immoral and evil for not keeping you locked up for your whole life? Or not having you born at all in the first place, for conceiving you? This is the type of question I think guys like this need to be asked, because he made a claim that his dad can perfectly predict his actions. Well, what if your action is this? This is the situation we have with Yahweh. Now, a lot of Christians actually have to make God more like PineCreek in order to solve this problem. And this is how they do it. Well, like PineCreek's a really good predictor, and like PineCreek, God just predicts the future. He doesn't really know it. That's one way they get through the problem of evil and suffering. Or they'll say something like, well, PineCreek is actually a little needy. He needs people to love him. He needs people to give him adulation. He needs to be seen and worshipped and praised. And that's sort of what Yahweh is like. He needs it. And so therefore he had to create, knowing that bad things would happen. But that's part of his nature to create in order to get this love, because, humans complete God. Without humans, God is just not enough. So these are the ways Christians get through this.
My question isn't about
so sorry.
Christian God.
If it's
my question is about my father.
If it's just to clarify, okay.
Yeah, the point is that if it's just your father and he can't create the world in any way, then he's just doing the best that he can, then no, he's not immoral. But if he can create the world a different way and he doesn't, then he's objectively immoral.
Okay.
We have time for two really quick questions, and then we've got to wrap up.
Really?
You talked about suffering and it being optional, and I was wondering what you meant by optional, what makes it morally worse to choose it.
Well, it's the choice that's moral. So you have a choice to do it as a...
Hey, Tom, can you go into my appear right now? I think you know what my appear address is, and as soon as this is over, you can hop in.
Opposed to being forced to do it without consent. It's obviously more moral that if you can choose it, then there's no problem there. But if you're forced to choose it and you have no choice, especially if you don't want it, that's obviously immoral. You can choose to suffer if you want to. There's no problem there. It's not immoral to choose to suffer. And people do choose to suffer. Like when you work out, you choose to suffer. When you choose to play video games that are really, really hard, you choose to suffer. You can choose to suffer for lots of reasons. But it should be optional. It shouldn't be forced.
Thank you. And one last question. Thank you.
If science says that there is absolutely no truth, why do you put all of your trust into something?
It says we can't know absolute truth. So there could be an absolute truth out there, but science doesn't tell us what it is. So science just gives us a good way to tell the difference between our imagination and what we experience about the world, what exists in reality. But it can't tell us, oh, this is absolute.
See, but Tom missed part of the question. The questioner asked, why do you put all your trust in science? I don't think Tom does, but Tom's here. Tom, do you put all your trust in science? Tom, can you hear me?
Yeah, can you hear me?
Yeah. Do you put all your trust in science?
All my trust in science? No, just science is just what I put my trust in to differentiate between imaginary and real things.
Yeah. See, that's the last questioner was asking that. Why do you put all your trust in it? I think she was implying that. And actually, hang on a second. Let me capture your soul. So I found it very interesting that most of the questions were for you. I guess there weren't a whole lot of atheists in that debate, or non-Christians?
Yeah, it was mostly the people from the church, so most of them knew Stephen. There were only a few from local atheist groups. But yeah, the reason we didn't have camera footage of those last two is just because I wasn't sent any. So because I did all the video editing on that was me, and I wasn't sent any footage of the last like 2 or 3 questioners, and so I couldn't add them.
Okay. Would you ever ask questions back of questioners, or was that poor taste, you think?
No, absolutely not. Given how long the questions were, I would not even risk it. Nope.
Yeah. See, and that's why I don't do debates, because even the Q&A at the end, I think the best way to, I'm just like Jesus, because I think the best way to respond to Christians ask me questions is ask questions back at them that show the point. Like when that one guy asked you, would that close the loop for you? If it's just like, what are you? All you have to do is like ask a question and just change the words into Allah and Islam. It's like, would that close the loop for you, Christian? Like you would become a Muslim if you could put your trust in Allah. It's like, how ridiculous is this?
Yeah.
But it shows what not to do if you're a Christian watching this.
Well, I mean, you should give them a little bit of a break, because they're not like on stage debaters. They're just random people who decided to get up on a mic. And it's kind of like back in high school when you're doing your first presentation and you're not really that used to talking in public.
No. I bet you almost every person, except for there was a few people who admitted that they were nervous. I bet you every person who had the gonads to go up and ask questions have some experience with debates, either online or, I think they're just bad. Because I've been to a few live debates in my life where I've gone up at the end and asked questions. And I'm cognizant of the idea that your question should be like 20 seconds long at most. And if it's more than that, like, what are you doing? I can't stress enough for people listening, people in general don't care what you have to say or think. And you need to learn to be okay with that. And, yeah. Did you agree with my assessment that for Stephen Worthy, that the reason he believes is because he thinks Jesus saved his life from addiction?
Probably, yeah. That's mostly what people believe, reasons people believe. If you have like some kind of a big impact in your life, if that happened to me, that would be probably what I believed. If like my prayers were answered and I was going through something hard and some change happened, some miraculous change and a big positive impact happened in my life, I'd probably believe for that reason.
You think so, even now?
Probably not now, because I know too much about the philosophy, but like when because I had major depression for most of my life, and if my praying actually worked and I got something out of it, I would probably still be a Christian.
Yeah. Yeah, because now if I would have to become desperate first, and if that desperation was alleviated through Jesus, and I still had a brain left, I would think, well, wait a minute, this other guy says the same thing and he believes in Allah, like something, maybe that's me, maybe I'm that Allah guy, and maybe the Allah guy is right, and so my confidence would still be really low for that reason. I think the best evidence that would change you and me would be, you say it's always you pray and you get a gold brick every time you try. It's repeatable, future prediction. If I pray to Jesus, there's a prediction, he'll give me a gold brick, and it worked. And for me, it's just like I'm not that vain. I'll say like amazing miracle of amputee getting his limb back or something. How did you feel at the end of that debate? Was there anything where you said, "Oh man, I shouldn't have said that," or "I should have said that"?
Not really, not that I can think of. I felt pretty good about it. Looking back, there are definitely things I could have improved upon, but given the fact that I was pretty much just going off the cuff, off the top of my head, because I really didn't prepare much. I prepared the introduction, but that was about it. So given that it was pretty much off the cuff, I think I did pretty well for the most part. I'm definitely, given the fact that I know Stephen and I know a lot of his arguments, I knew what it was going to be like. So I wasn't too concerned about it, like as opposed to my next one, which I'm a little more worried about.
Yeah. No, I think it's the combination of what you do and what I do as far as outsider test of faith. I think you can still be a Christian and still enjoy the community aspect of Christianity and so forth. But I think if you're intellectually honest, I know this is so bad of me to say, but I think if you're intellectually honest, you have to lower your confidence and say, you know what? I really don't know that God created the universe. I really don't know that Jesus rose from the dead. I'm going to choose to believe it, but really, I don't have good reasons. And but I need meaning, I need purpose, I need hope, and so I'll just kind of force myself to believe it until I die. Is that
Yeah, it's like the fideist position. I kind of like the fideist position of we can't really know God, but we're going to believe anyway.
Yeah. Yeah, and there's actually quite a few people out there who are like that. It's like the alternative is just, it's not livable for them. So, okay, we're getting some questions now. Andrew Thopel asked what he thinks about veganism to you.
What I think about veganism?
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I was being honest there when I think that animals are beings and it's immoral to kill them. And so I think that they should be treated with respect and they are moral agents and that it is wrong to kill them. But I do like cheeseburgers and I'm just immoral and that's it.
So would you say it's like last night I had a black widow spider, 2 nights ago, a black widow spider. I think you saw the picture on Facebook. You wouldn't say it's immoral to kill it, would you?
Yep.
Really?
I think that it's a being if it has consciousness and it's immoral to kill it.
But you don't even know if it, well.
I kind of tend to grant that most things have consciousness if it has a brain of some kind. And insects have brains, so I grant they have consciousness. But I think it's justified because of the world we live in. You could kill it to protect like your kids and your family or whatever. But I think it's still immoral given my model of morality.
Yeah, but then it gets to the point where who cares if something's immoral or not if it's justified? Like the word immoral even starts to lose its meaning because you could say, yeah, I'm immoral every day, but so what? I'll kill that black widow spider 100 times out of 100, but call me immoral, but who cares? Let's see, next question. Nathan, good to see you here. He's the guy I interviewed the other day. If naturalism is true, I accept it and cannot tolerate my suffering. Why should I not kill myself? Whoa. Okay. I know we all get sad once in a while.
I don't, like, if you can't tolerate your suffering, you should have the right to choose to end it.
I'm going to answer the question based on my strengths, and that is in finance. I have a finance degree. And there's something called option theory. And there's something called call options and put options. And a call option is the option to buy a certain amount of stock at a certain price by a certain amount of time. You have the option to do it, but you don't have to, not the obligation. You don't have to exercise that right. And so when it comes to suicide, I would say that, not in all cases, but in most cases, you should not end your life because you cannot see the future, you cannot see the options ahead of you. In other words, your life is like a call option that has value until expiration. I think for most people that's not going to resonate. But anyhow, if you know anything about finance and call options, you can say, yeah, I understand it because you never exercise a call option early because it has value till the end. And so I think your life is like that. Because let's say you're suffering because of MS, like my sister, and you're paralyzed. It could happen that a month from now, we have a breakthrough in MS, stem cell, whatever, and the worst cases of MS can be completely cured. And actually, I just talked to my mom, was it yesterday? 2 days ago. I talked to my mom, and she said that my sister's finally getting open to the idea of killing herself through taking a feeding tube out. Now, she's a Christian. Can you imagine that, Tom? She's a born-again Christian. She loves Jesus. And even she is starting to say, you know what? I'm sick of life. I just want to die and go to heaven. And all she has to do is pull a feeding tube out, and it's done. But for many years, she thought that was a sin because that'd be like killing yourself.
Well, I mean, that's where I disagree with the call option example, because the call option doesn't cost anything to just keep it and not doing anything, whereas continuing to live and suffer, it has an extreme cost to it.
I agree. Like, I understand, especially my sister's case, like living in pain every day. It's, so in that case, I think I said not all, but in most situations, I think in some situations, yeah, you actually should kill yourself. Can I say that on YouTube? Because I'm thinking of my sister right now, and I know my sister's situation, and I can't think of a worse situation to be in, where you're sitting in a hospital bed in pain every minute of every day. Nobody's visiting you, or very few people are visiting you because people have lives. You can't move. You're completely paralyzed, but your brain is still active. Can you imagine that? And you just waiting for the next moment where someone will flip you over or turn on the TV for you or visit and talk to you, and you're in pain. It's like, that is a great example of where suicide is A-okay in my books, because I would want it for myself. But why are we talking about this? It's because of Nathan Orman. Thanks a lot, Nathan. So depressing. Got another question from Andres. I got to do some editing here. Is suicide selling short? I think sometimes yes, sometimes no, Doug Dean. Is reading Leviticus bad for my health?
Probably.
Yeah, I would say so. I think it's most of it's very boring. How does Tom deal with the brain idea problem? Oh, can you answer that in 30 seconds?
I don't know exactly what he's referring to.
I think he's talking about the I think he's
brain
talking about,
idea.
I think he's talking about the problem of consciousness. Actually, I don't know exactly what he's saying, but whatever he's asking, it's probably not a simple question that you can answer in 30 seconds. If the Bible's not 100% translated correctly, does that make it blasphemous? And what do we do with the many different translations? Evan Edge asks, I'm not a Christian, Evan, and so you're asking me more of a Christian type question. But I can put myself in the Christian worldview. If the Bible's not 100% translated correctly, does that make it blasphemous? No. We have to look at different translations and compare and do proper exegesis and all that stuff.
I think they'd say something like, well, God keeps the most important part of the message there. He inspires it. It's inspired to make sure that part doesn't change. So even if the parts that really don't matter can change a little bit, it's the core message that's still there.
Yeah, but even the core message can be a little muddy. Like, who goes to heaven is not a simple question for a Christian to answer. Because as soon as they give an answer, I can think of an exception just like that, and they know it, and so it's tough on them. Except for the Calvinists. They have it. They say whoever God wants. That's the best answer. Joakim West asks, are there any repeatable, testable predictions that show that a black widow spider has consciousness? I'd say no. But
Joakim?
I would say I'm okay with Tom thinking I'm immoral. It's fine. It's actually similar to racism. The whole, because...
Speciesism?
It's speciesism and racism. Yeah. So this is a question that's going to get this live stream in big trouble. But how would you answer this? What exactly is it about racism that makes it bad?
What do you mean by bad? Like, it's wrong to judge. Like, the opinion of racism, I don't think is bad. You can have whatever opinion you want, like or dislike whoever you want. But if you impose restrictions on people for whatever reason, the skin color, whether you like them, that's objectively immoral. So the immorality of racism comes when you impose or restrict people's rights. And that part is what makes it wrong. Your feelings and opinions, I don't think, can be wrong.
So
you can
now,
have whatever opinion you want.
Now, might make you uncomfortable, Tom, but what if, in a certain case, racism of a certain individual caused him or her to treat others better and gave them more freedoms and liberties?
All right. So if you're helping people, that's moral. I mean, like I said before, whatever ideas you have.
I guess it depends on how you define racism. But I'm saying racism is the cause of treating other people better.
Well, again, so there's two things here. There's the belief that you have in your head and the actions you do in the world. The actions you do in your world are what's moral and immoral. The beliefs you have in your head are not moral or immoral. No belief in your head can be moral or immoral. It's only the actions. So if your actions are good and help people, those are moral. Doesn't matter why you do them. And if your actions are bad and hurt people, then they're immoral, and it doesn't matter why you do them.
Yeah.
So the beliefs in your head of whether you're racist and you judge people or not is just irrelevant. It's the actions in the world that matter. So racism is bad only because the people who are racist usually use that to hurt people. And so it's the hurting people that's bad, not really the belief in the racism.
Right. So if you believe that a certain race is inferior to another, but that leads you, so you're under that definition of racism, if that you're a racist, but if that leads you to treat those people who you believe are inferior to you in a better way, then racism, you'd want that person to be racist.
Sort of. So again,
see, this is the weird part.
The opinion of racism is not wrong. The opinion is just an opinion. It's the actions that are wrong. So normally we attribute the two to be the same thing, and so racism is the actions, which makes it wrong. But if you're just talking about the opinion, then racism is not wrong.
Yeah.
You can have whatever opinions you want. It's not moral or immoral.
I don't know what this has to do with speciesism now, if we could apply it. But anyway, it doesn't matter. There's another question here. Roger Wade asked, am I guaranteed to go to heaven if I become a Christian? No. You can be a true Christian and still go to hell. How is that possible, Doug? Because Christianity is false. But true Christian means you really believe that Jesus Christ...
Wait. If Christianity is false, then how could you possibly go to hell?
Because there's different concepts of hell.
But I'm pretty sure he's talking about the Christian hell. So give him the benefit of the doubt. Maybe it's like the Japanese kind of hell. Yeah, you can go to the Japanese hell.
Well, he actually didn't use the word hell. He just used the word heaven. But if I was to change his question to, am I guaranteed to go to the Christian heaven if I become a Christian? Then I would say, yeah. Because the question presupposes that Christianity is true at that point then.
I don't think so, because given the Calvinist thing, it's possible that some Christians who call themselves Christians are still rejected by God.
Well, see, I'm giving him the benefit of the doubt that when he says, if I become a Christian, he means a true Christian, right? An elect Christian. But I like that question, and I read it out loud because it reminds me of people saying, well, Doug and Tom, if you're right, I have lost nothing. I'm just worm food when I die. But if I'm right, Doug, me the Christian, if I'm right, then, you and Tom have lost it all. You don't get to spend eternity with Jesus, or you'll go to this bad place called hell. And my point is, no, you can be a true Christian, and Tom and I can be true atheists, and we all three of us end up in this place called hell because the Muslims were right, or the Jews were right.
I'd like to go a different road. I'd like to say there is an atheist God who only lets atheists into heaven, and he puts all Christians into hell.
Andres saying he didn't like your statement about racism and internal thoughts. If internal beliefs don't matter, let me ask, who is more committed to their wife, a man who commits adultery or the man who desires deeply to commit adultery? Well, that's an easy question.
My position is that opinions are not moral or immoral. You can have whatever opinions you want. Morality is only limited to things that hurt or help other people. Your opinions don't hurt or help other people, then they're not moral or immoral.
But but his question is, who's more committed to their wife? A man who commits adultery or a man who just thinks about committing adultery but doesn't? That's easy. It's the man who thinks about adultery but doesn't do it is way more committed to their wife. So this whole idea of thought crime in the New Testament is, who cares? It's like the only problem with thought crime is it makes Yahweh turn his smile into a frown. He's just unhappy with you. He's not pleased. But it really doesn't hurt anybody just to think thoughts.
Right, exactly.
Except for maybe yourself, because it might cause depression.
Right, so the thoughts of committing adultery are not immoral. There's nothing wrong with that. You can think that as much as you want. It's only the action that would be immoral.
Right. Nathan asks, what is your moral ontology?
I've done several debates and videos on that. It's a long discussion. I would suggest watching like my recent debate with Destiny on that one.
He says ontology, not epistemology. Number one, to me, epistemology is more important than ontology, because even if we have an ontological, moral, objective truth out there, who cares about it? Who cares if there's objective truth and objective morals? If we can't know what it is. It's just something to think about with having a cigar in your mouth. It's other than that, so epistemology of how we can figure out what is true or moral is more important than what actually is on an ontological sense, because what I just said.
Well, my honest answer would be, as I think abstract objects can still be objective. Like if you draw a triangle, it's objectively true that it's going to add up to 180, and I think morality is kind of the same way. It doesn't need to exist like a law or grounded in a God. but it can still be objective. So my ontology of morality is that it's like an abstract object.
Yeah, I agree. It still could be, but to me it's irrelevant if we can't know what it is. And actually, my advice when talking with theists is to say that. Like, let's say your God's real. Let's say there's objective moral truths out there. So what? Now what? Well, now we got to follow that, Doug. Okay, how do I do that? Well, you got to read this book called the Bible. Okay, so when it says to Moses, God said to Moses to kill women, children, should I take that as an example what to do with certain people in the world? No. That's you're still stuck with the problem of how to behave. And in what cases do we kill people? What cases do we don't? Do we never kill people? When's self-defense justified? All these things. It's still a complicated mess. Anyhow, my moral ontology is not to poke people's eyes with sticks. It's just pretty simple as that. It's like based on well-being, unnecessary suffering, that sort of thing. Is that it for questions? Racism is unscientific. I would disagree with that.
Yeah, so sort of, but not sort of. So in science, there is no such thing as a race. That's not a real thing in science. But there is a thing called an ecocline or a cline, which are essentially the same thing as races. They're just based off of demographics, not skin color. So racism as a thing dependent by skin color is not scientific. It's completely made up. But there is a scientific equivalent called ecoclines, which are scientific.
PineCreek, do you think there's the math code to the universe? If yes, can it exist without a code giver? And do you also think that elements can vibrate infinitely in the past and in the future? Oh, this guy's name is the dude who bangs Shamonian's wife. So it's Do I think there's a math code of the universe? Depending on how you define math code, but probably not. So if yes, it doesn't apply. Do you think that elements can vibrate infinitely in the past and the future? Not at 0 degrees Kelvin. That's the temperature at which you get it.
Absolute zero?
Yeah, take your auto zoom off or auto focus off. And focus.
I'm trying to do. I don't know how to do it.
Oh.
There we go. There we go. That works.
Okay. Oh, we got some more questions now. Doug Dean, your ideas poke my mind's eye. That's good. Nathan, when you talk about mathematical structuralism, to me it reeks of a person who has this belief and is trying to not feel stupid about it. Sorry if that sounds rude, but that's...
What is this question about?
About mathematical structuralism. Must maths be defined by abstract objects?
Math isn't described by abstract objects.
Math's described by guys like Tom and Doug.
Well, reality exists and math describes reality.
Right. By humans.
Exactly.
How many pine points is a Jesus brick worth? Oh, a gold brick? Oh, he's asking for a concrete exchange rate. I'm not going to give it. I want people to bathe in uncertainty what a pine point's actually worth. Okay, I'm going to start the music. But we can still talk for 2 minutes.
Did Hayden, the guy I interviewed before, did he contact you at all?
No, I asked him to, because I went on JMD's channel, said, hey, I like you, why don't you come on my channel?
Yeah, I said he was looking for atheists, and I suggested you to come on his show.
Oh. Yeah, that's why I admire Nathan. He came on the other day, but he was pretty nervous.
You got any big conversations coming up? Anybody else coming on the show soon?
No. I think most Christians see what's coming, and so they don't want to even go there with me. Actually, let's talk about. I'm going to stop the music. I want to talk about Randall Rouser for a bit because we personally, me and you talked about it, and the situation was I chose to be rude and condescending to Randall Rouser on that one video. I chose to do that.
Wait, what? You're not always like that?
No, I'm not always like that. I made a conscious. Let me put it this way: I made a conscious decision beforehand, and because I'm going to give my explanation, which I've already told you, so this is not news to you. But you can ask me questions if you want. I first knew of Randall. I haven't read any of his books and nothing. I first saw him on your channel. And then someone posted something that led me to his blog, and so I found him rebutting William Lane Craig on some issue, and I agreed with 95% of what he said, and made a video on it. And he found it and pushed back on me on it for almost no reason. I said one thing that, because William Lane Craig's basically justifying Old Testament atrocities by saying God might have more than sufficient reasons, and that's where I poked Randall Rouser on that. How dare you say that God could not have commanded the genocide of the Amalekites because he might have morally sufficient reasons. The problem of suffering, if you use that on the problem of suffering, you can use it for Yahweh in the Old Testament. And I said that to him on his blog and in the video, and there was a lot of Christians, or at least some, and a lot of atheists who agreed with me and was like, yeah, like, you probably do use that verbiage with handling suffering. And well, so anyhow, that was the only point of disagreement. But we had a back and forth, me and Randall, where he basically said stuff to me and I made a few comments. And then he made this comment. He said, Doug, why are you dodging all my questions? And I stopped because whenever I hear that, I'm thinking of an 18-year-old male who just needs to be right and who's insecure about what they believe. Sorry, but I do. Because I've been doing this for a while. And when I saw him, a professor, PhD, make that same comment that I see so many young adolescents make, I went back line by line by line on our conversation on his blog and looked for question marks where he actually asked me a question. I couldn't find any. He was just making statements. But to him, I think him making a statement is the same as a question because he expects me to respond to every statement. But anyhow, there's no question there. And I thought, so right away from the very beginning, I had a question mark in my head about him. It's like, what's really going on here? Is he like these adolescent teenagers who just need to feel right and will say ad hominem and fallacy when we're just having a casual conversation, not an argument. And so my impression of him was not good from the beginning after that conversation. And then one day I realized I hadn't followed him on Twitter, so I follow him. He follows me right back within seconds. And from that moment on, this was early in the morning day, from that moment on, he was hounding me, and he even made a blog post about me, like within minutes, saying that my slogan, doubts of virtue, is bad or whatever. And I made the conscious decision at that point to agree with everything he said, and that bothered him even more because he knew I was being facetious. I just didn't have the time for him. I said, so he would say, I don't know, your slogan's bad. Or no, I could just call it doubts of virtue as a slogan. I said, yeah, it's just a slogan. Relax, it's okay. But he took it seriously, like it's not virtuous. And then, but anyhow, it was a constant drip all day because I keep my Facebook and my Twitter open while I'm working during the day. And so I was busy. But it was a constant drip. And then every time he said something derogatory or about my slogan or whatever, I just said, yeah, you're probably right. It's probably even worse than what you're saying. I just gave him everything he wanted. And then an atheist said, Doug, why don't you let Randall question you, interrogate you, like you did him on the previous video, like we're basically interview. And I said, sure, how about 15 minutes? Now, at this point, it's the end of the day. I hadn't eaten, so I was lacking calories, but I quickly wolfed down some food, and then my wife gave me this shake, like just before we went on, and I couldn't resist that. And so he was already waiting for me in the appear room. but I know Randall a little bit about him, that he likes philosophy and so forth. So I knew I could guess what type of questions he would ask me. And I made a conscious decision. I'm going to keep my answers like 10 seconds or less. I'm going to force him to ask good follow-up questions to get clarity. And so that was my strategy going in. And I wasn't going to make anything easy for him. In other words, a combative witness. Basically, I'm going to see what kind of skill he has as a questioner. And so he would ask me a question like, his first question out of the gate was like, what's your worldview? And I said, well, I believe the earth is spherical shaped and goes about the sun, and that children are our future. It's like, that's my, and he immediately went, oh, so you just have, and he immediately out of the gate started to straw man me, It's like, oh, that's only what you believe? Like, so some quips about children or whatever. And it didn't get any better from that, after that. Then he got into, you could tell he asked me about questions which interests him, but not me. But that's fine. But I just gave honest answers. If I didn't know something, I'd say, I don't know. I purposely, when he asked me about morality, I could have gone into evolution and how that may aid survival, but I knew exactly where that would lead if I did. So I kept my answers like a 5-year-old would answer, or maybe a 10-year-old, and just to see what he would do with it. And what he did with it was make assumptions and move on instead of asking clarified questions. And so basically, that was the gist of my strategy with him, is to force him. Then he said I was being condescending to him, which I was. But then I basically looked him in the face and said, look, I'm going to condescend you for the rest of the hour. You have a choice. Deal with it or leave. And he decided to deal with it and stay. So, okay, you're in it, so let's keep going. And by the way, I did soften up a little bit towards the end of it. Maybe it's because when the shake kicked in, but or the flurry.
Well, I mean, I think that was actually a good strategy for him, is when you did give those really short answers, he could just interpret that in the way he wanted and say, okay, so here's what you're saying. Okay, let's move on to the next question. It's a good way to address a hostile witness, is just to interpret what they're saying in the way you want to say.
Well, it's good in one sense, but bad in another, because even though I purposely was, what's the word? Terse. Even though I was purposely terse with him and curt with him, people could see that he was assuming things about my answers. See, the problem is when you answer short and concise, it's really hard to straw man short answers, because they're by design incomplete. So in order to even straw man it, you have to make assumptions about it. And so that's why I chose that strategy. And then, but what really I think bothered people, even with some of my subscribers, was when I basically showed him no mercy and said, look, when I hear someone ask if they're reasonable for believing in the resurrection, it's like they want me to coddle them in their arms and saying, don't worry, you are smart, you're okay. And I forget exactly how I put it, but I do feel that way, especially for people like him who have a PhD. And they're asking a guy like me, a YouTuber, who they really don't know anything about, like, do you think I'm rational for believing in the resurrection? Who cares what I think about you? Like, why would you ever ask that? It's like you're looking for affirmation?
Well, I think there's actually a reason behind that, because my whole point, my entire purpose is to show that they're not reasonable. I want to show that anybody who believes in God and says there's reason is completely full of crap. And his job is actually the exact opposite.
Right.
That he's trying to show that, yes, actually Christians are reasonable for believing. There are reasons behind it, because this whole science movement has made it pretty unpopular to just believe things for no reason. And so we want to make sure that there are reasons for Christians to believe, and it is a reasonable position. And so if you can get someone like you, because you're a popular YouTuber, tons of subscribers that I'm totally jealous of, not at all. Not jealous. Not jealous. But,
well, I even said that to him. I said, look, I think you're asking this question because a decade or two of Christians being beat up, and you want Christians to say, no, you're not stupid for believing these things. You're totally rational and reasonable. We got all this evidence. Yeah, so I conceded that to him. But the point still remains that if you're a Christian and you truly believe what you believe, who cares if Tom or Doug or PineCreek thinks you're irrational for believing it? Like we're lost. Tom and I are lost. We're under the power, the dominion of the evil one, according to what you believe in Scripture, most of you. So like you should, and the gospel is foolishness to those who are perishing. Oh, I brought that up to your last debate, and that guy, he just redefined the word foolish. I kind of saw that coming, but whenever a guy like Randall Rouser asks, do you think I'm rational for believing this? I didn't do this, I should have, but every person, non-Christian, should say, well, the gospel, it says in your own text, the gospel is foolishness to those who are not Christian. And so, yeah, every non-Christian is going to think you're foolish for believing in the resurrection. You just got to deal with it. But you have the Holy Spirit on your side, everything's fine, you're going to go to heaven, so don't worry about it if we think you're stupid.
Well, I think it's more like, kind of like the goal of most atheists isn't to convince the hardcore theists because they're going to take the position that you just said and that, well, no, you're just foolish or you're just deluded by the world and don't really understand it. But the goal is to get the people who are on the fence. And the people who are on the fence think you need to have rational reasons to believe things. And so they're not going to be satisfied with the hard Christian answer. And so they need those reasons to exist to be able to believe in Christianity, which is what Randall is doing. He's presenting those as a way to get the people on the fence to the theist side, as opposed to the atheist who's trying to get them on the atheist side. I think that's essentially his goal, is to try and get those people on the fence, say, there are good reasons to believe. You don't have to believe on faith alone, because if you did, you wouldn't do it.
But this is why I don't respect Randall, because I hear what you're saying, that this is his goal as an apologist, a Christian apologist, to do this. But I don't respect him because when I asked him, what's the worst that could happen if I don't become a Christian? He avoided that question like the plague. And I think he went from answering, well, because it's true, and I asked, well, so what if it's true? Why should someone become a Christian? Like, what about it being true makes it that someone ought to do it? And really, he went with, well, it's by definition answer. Just by definition, you ought to do what is true, or believe what is true. But I was asking the more question of, there's many truths out there. We don't need to know or believe all of them. Why ought I believe this one? And I was basically trying to get him to talk about heaven and hell, and it seemed to me like he refused to go there. And if a Christian refuses to talk about heaven and hell when a non-Christian is pleading with them to, I lose respect for them right away. Because my guess is he doesn't want to talk about heaven and hell because he doesn't want to go down that carrot and stick narrative, which really I think that's what Christianity is all about, carrots and sticks. And so he saw that coming and he didn't want to go there. And I lost respect for him with that.
Right, I can understand that, but I'd be like the Dillahuntty response of, I want to believe as many true things and as few false things as possible. So it's like, from the philosopher's perspective, if you ask, why should I believe something that's true? Well, that's just, if you're a philosopher, you kind of just do. That's what they want out of the whole experience of philosophy.
Not necessarily. There's not many. There's some things that I think it's beneficial to believe false things.
But from the perspective of a philosopher, I don't think they would agree. Like, it could be beneficial, but
but philosophers are not people. They're not
That's
people,
right.
real people on the streets.
That's true.
Like, if believing a false thing can aid to you not committing suicide or not killing another human, if believing a false thing, like, for example, there are maybe people out there in the world who would murder if they didn't have their belief in Jesus. You and I think the belief in Jesus rising from the dead and all this stuff is false. But if it's helping prevent someone from shooting up kids at a school, I want you to believe false things. Now, maybe those cases are so rare, and maybe there's only like a handful in the world that's actually true, what I'm describing. But even if there's just one, in that one case, I want you to believe false things. And I'm proud to admit it.
It's actually a lot more common than you think, because most of the beliefs we have from evolution, like this cup is solid, that's a belief that is false, because 99% of it is empty space. But it's a belief produced by evolution to make us produce survivability. So most of the beliefs we have are false, but produce survivability.
Yeah. Yeah, so anyhow, I hope that explains my behavior with Randall Rouser. I still, to this day, don't respect him, though. I'd rather talk to a guy like, Chris Gadsden. Gadsden? Yeah. No, he's...
Did you have him on?
Yeah, I've talked to him. We talked about thought experiment on my library thought experiment. And,
oh, yeah, I remember that.
Yeah. I had no problem talking to him. So it's not like I'm biased against philosophers or anything. It's just that when I perceive that Randall has this deep need to feel right about things to complete strangers and says, why are you evading questions when I never ask questions, and just not taking the hints that I don't care what you think about my slogans or whatever. I don't care what you think of me. And but he's still like dripping all day. It's like he needs to be viewed by other Christians as, I got PineCreek or something. I can see it from an 18-year-old to 22-year-old young male Christian who just trying to make a name for themselves. But an older, middle-aged PhD philosopher working at a university, no, come on, you're better than this.
I don't know. I like to give him the benefit of the doubt. I think he just enjoys it. I think, like I do, I go after
Don't give
Christians
Canadians the benefit of the doubt. People say, like, Canadians have been so crafty in having this persona of being polite and kind. It's just a farce, those Canadians. Okay, let's start the
Doug
music.
shows the true nature of Canadians.
Okay, so much trouble I got myself in the chat now. There's no way this video is ever gonna be monetized. We talked about racism and suicide and...
Do yours normally get demonetized? Because mine normally get. I think I only have like 4 that are demonetized.
It's getting worse.
Yeah.
It used to be that maybe 10 to 20% would get demonetized, and then I would challenge it. For the past month or two, every video I make is demonetized, and so the first 2,000 views I get, no advertising on it, or very little, limited. But then after 24 to 48 hours, after I appeal it, then it goes green. Actually, my last one with William Lane Craig didn't go green. It's still demonetized. I don't know why.
Yeah, that's the same for me. They always start as demonetized as soon as they go up, and then I have to appeal and wait. Usually it takes an hour. Usually it takes one day, 24 hours. And they go green.
Yeah. You would think that YouTube would keep track of all the times where they've been wrong, their algorithm's been wrong with certain YouTubers, and they say, basically give guys like me and you the benefit of the doubt. But I guess YouTube's treating me like I treat Randall Rouser.
Yep.
Which is fair. It's their platform. And I'm not doing this for the money. I'm doing this for the fame.
Yeah, you can tell. You got a street named after you, right?
Yeah, exactly. I forget I had that picture somewhere, but there's a street in Colorado, in Colorado Springs, named after me. Poof. I just poofed you out of existence, Tom, because I'm more moral than Yahweh. I don't drown you. I just poof. Oh, I should hang on. I gotta do something. I want to show the Poof or Drown t-shirt that someone made.
Oh, you're gonna put it on your Teesprings. Make a thing so people can buy it.
Yeah, I know. I just feel so dirty. I feel dirty making money.
You can put it on mine. I'll sell it.
I don't feel dirty making money. I feel dirty. I don't know what's wrong with me.
Take more showers.
Where's the t-shirt? Here we go.
Is it like a real one you're trying to hold up to the camera?
No, it's a digital one. So you guys can tell me what you think of this. This was made by a subscriber. I'll give full credit. Ron Mendonca.
That's pretty good. I like it.
Would you buy it? Liking it's one thing, buying it's another.
Is it under $5?
Actually, I'd probably give it to you for free.
Yeah, I like it. It's nice.
I think the PineCreek thing should go in the back, though, not the front. But yeah, I think this is a great conversation starter. I think people could buy this T-shirt and go to Bible studies, and the Christians will ask, "What's that?"
Get kicked out? Yeah, yep, that's a great idea.
If you are an 18-year-old Christian who loves to cause trouble in church, you would buy a T-shirt like this.
Yeah, that was really good. I like the artwork. Whoever did that as a
Ron Madonka made it. So I'm not sure if I'll use it or if he'll give me permission to use it or want to cut. I don't know. But hey, thanks for hanging out with us, guys. It was great. My apologies to Stephen Worthy. He was scheduled to come on and defend himself, but we ran out of time. Take care.